Inside the Ferrari 296, the engine hums with a promise that feels almost sacred. Now, we got updates on all the different cars this week, and it's been absolutely manic. We bought a house in Miami, pieced together a Bugatti with our own hands, and I flew back across the Atlantic without saying a proper goodbye to this machine, because I genuinely believe this represents a massive turning point in my journey and the entire channel's trajectory. I want to open this experience up to all of you. Ferrari has allegedly blocked a YouTuber named Matt Armstrong from rebuilding his own supercar, and what started as a disagreement has escalated into something far uglier. Matt Armstrong, a popular gearhead who transforms wrecked supercars using the most unconventional methods imaginable, has finally encountered the ultimate challenge. A Ferrari 296 GTB stands at the center of this high-stakes confrontation between ownership rights and brand sovereignty. The Huracan rebuild suffered front-end damage from an unfortunate encounter with a fox, but that should resolve itself easily enough once we get the front bumper painted. The real update concerns the 296 Ferrari, because we've hit a significant obstacle with Ferrari themselves. This standoff between Ferrari and Matt leaves countless questions suspended in the air. Will Matt ultimately prevail in remodeling this extraordinary machine? Will Ferrari ever compromise on their notoriously strict brand control? Join us as we examine the most intense automotive confrontation currently unfolding in the enthusiast community. Matt Armstrong has become YouTube's favorite automotive daredevil. Few risk-takers in the automotive world ignite an engine and shatter as many conventions as Matt Armstrong does. He simply cannot resist the adrenaline rush, or at least that's how mainstream media has portrayed him relentlessly. The YouTube gearhead launched his fast-paced lifestyle brand back on April 7th, 2013, initially creating content focused on BMX trick videos and athletic stunts exclusively. He filmed the most audacious videos, frequently dancing with danger, throwing caution aside, embracing massive risks, and accepting whatever consequences followed. By the mid-2010s, his reputation had spread worldwide as YouTube's latest sensation, serving up spectacular BMX bike tricks and athletic content to spare. But as the years accumulated, reality struck him with sudden force, awakening something dormant within his imagination. The time had arrived for transformation, and he recognized it immediately. He understood that his career as a BMXer wasn't generating sufficient income. Although he possessed enough resources to film his next daring project featuring other risk-takers who enjoyed hazarding their lives on camera, he lacked the financial cushion for anything beyond that. The pressure mounted, and he desperately needed a new direction. So he reversed course completely and returned to his origins. Matt grew up surrounded by the metallic clatter of wrenches against engines, oil cascading from damaged vehicles, and a father who earned his living as both garage owner and lead mechanic. Matt assisted like any typical boy who idolized his father, absorbing lessons about managing oil leaks and understanding the fundamental principles of engine repair. But somehow he had wandered away from that path for far too long, attempting to forge his own identity as a BMX performer. Those efforts clearly weren't succeeding. So he did what came naturally to him and took a gamble on something most people would dismiss as insane or simply too avant-garde for someone desperate for immediate success. He purchased wrecked cars in quantity and decided to restore them on his channel while the world observed. Everything that followed became legendary. But just before his notable confrontations with premium brands and supercars, particularly Ferraris and Bugattis, he started modestly with a truly defining moment, arriving to the purchase of his girlfriend's Audi TT, which had been damaged in a collision. How crucial was that moment to his development as a mechanic? It's been a week since somebody crashed into the TT in a hit-and-run incident. I had parked my car just down the road, and this experience would reshape everything about how he approached automotive restoration and his relationship with the manufacturers who built these magnificent machines. From his earliest social media days, Matt never possessed the temperament to leave well enough alone. He constantly hunted for the next crowd-pleasing spectacle, pursuing anything that generated frenzied engagement from his YouTube audience. That characteristic became inseparable from his identity and public persona as circumstances evolved. Being an established BMX rider with an expanding audience made it remarkably easy for him to showcase his new automotive venture publicly. But he wasn't the only gearhead channel competing for attention on YouTube. He faced serious competition from Tavares, Samcrack, and Shmee 150 among others. But Matt remained unfazed by the crowded field. He had developed a completely distinctive approach to his craft. He wove elements of narrative storytelling into his videos, providing background details about how each car sustained its damage and explaining his intentions not merely to repair it, but to enhance it beyond its original condition. But one complication persisted. Although Matt possessed hands-on mechanical experience, he had grown somewhat rusty after pursuing an entirely different career trajectory for years before this unexpected return. What this meant was that he rarely achieved perfect results immediately the way a seasoned professional mechanic would. He frequently made errors that resulted in spectacular failures, but those setbacks paradoxically kept fans engaged, anxiously awaiting the next episode and desperate to discover whether he would succeed the following attempt. Matt wasn't simply demonstrating his capacity to rebuild these destroyed vehicles. He was simultaneously documenting his evolution from risk-loving BMX performer to wrecked car restoration specialist. Predictably, he received every variety of feedback imaginable, the encouraging, the critical, and the genuinely harsh. He not only restored these cars to working condition, but he also managed to infuriate purists who characterized his restoration philosophy as equivalent to assembling Frankenstein's monster. He felt perfectly comfortable purchasing components designed for a Porsche and installing them into an Audi or Toyota that required them. Car manufacturers have traditionally maintained stores and authorized garages where replacement parts could be purchased for repairs. But Matt's willingness to assume a godlike role with someone else's creation led him toward unconventional restoration approaches. While most brands generally overlook what critics consider excessive liberties, the ultra-premium luxury car manufacturers chose confrontation instead. For proper context, brands like Ferrari and Bugatti have always enforced regulations governing the use of their sports cars, establishing stringent ownership policies designed to protect both their clientele and their brand reputation. As expected, Matt Armstrong was absolutely cognizant of these restrictions. Yet he chose deliberate rebellion, provoking the establishment and testing their resolve. But were these contractual image protections merely empty threats? And how severely did they ultimately retaliate against Matt? The Ferrari 296 GTB represented a project that crossed invisible boundaries. Matt has dominated this restoration space for well over a decade, rebuilding every category of vehicle from luxury marques to supercars and performance automobiles. As years passed, he increasingly modified components, assembling a harmonious creation from disparate automotive sources, and largely escaped consequences. While most brands typically overlook this practice of deconstructing their vehicles after crashes and reimagining them according to his vision, one manufacturer simply could not tolerate such liberties. Ferrari. When discussing Ferraris, remember that we left the 296 situation with the car refusing to start and an email dispatched to Ferrari headquarters. I'm still waiting for their response. Owners don't merely purchase cars from Ferrari. They acquire social status, heritage, tradition, and a legacy of opulence combined with velocity. As an automobile designed exclusively for the elite class, ownership arrives with distinctive privileges and alleged constraints, including the prohibition against unauthorized engine replacement by anyone lacking the company's official certification. Independent rebuilds and repairs performed without explicitly using original equipment manufacturer calibration tools known as OEMs, along with unauthorized additions of turbocharger or hybrid system upgrades, all violate their terms. However, once someone becomes a risk-taking entertainer, that identity persists permanently, and Matt was genuinely unrestrained, desperately determined to rebuild this plug-in hybrid Berlinetta featuring a 2.9-liter twin-turbo V6 engine. But the specifications become even more impressive with these twin turbocharged engines paired with an electric motor delivering just over 819 horsepower, capable of accelerating from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 3 seconds, and achieving a top speed exceeding 205 miles per hour. Ferrari had already created the perfect asphalt predator, but following its recent destruction, it now awaited restoration. But how would Ferrari respond to Matt's interference with their magnificent creation? Matt, embracing the uncertainty, accepted the challenge of rebuilding the recently wrecked supercar he purchased for $100,000. But he maintains that his progress has completely stalled. Initially, fans of his YouTube channel wondered what was happening. searching desperately online for answers and finding virtually nothing. But it didn't require much time before speculation began circulating. Some sources suggested Ferrari may have quietly restricted Matt, preventing him from acquiring the components necessary to repair this vehicle. While these whispers lacked confirmation from credible sources, they proved sufficient to amplify into considerable noise. Gradually, tabloids and blogs accelerated their coverage, demanding Ferrari respond and hoping for clarification. But here's where the situation becomes complicated. An organization possessing Ferrari's magnitude and prestige understands public relations intimately, yet not a single obvious action was taken to silence the growing controversy. The brand remained completely quiet and simply ignored the speculation until it became repetitious and descended into stale news territory. Once again, strategic silence appeared victorious in a public relations battle accompanied by substantial commotion. But why would Ferrari invest such effort to suppress Matt's project? Is it conceivable that he shared a troubled history with the brand? Matt's unresolved relationship with Ferrari stretches back further than this current controversy. Matt initiated the confrontation when he selected a Ferrari as his next brand to rebuild from wreckage before a substantial audience. For someone who had operated in the automotive business that extensively, most observers would assume he understood precisely what type of response he would provoke from Ferrari by attempting to rebuild one of their most prestigious machines. Yet sources familiar with him describe his attitude as supremely confident regarding this challenge. Naturally, that generated numerous questions. Why did he possess such confidence? Did he know something others didn't? Or was this simply another YouTuber's decision to deliberately court controversy? But precedent exists here. Matt had previously undertaken a challenge of rebuilding a Ferrari 812, which he featured on his YouTube channel, accumulating significant viewership. His objective wasn't solely to rebuild a Ferrari, but to thoroughly dismantle the myth that affordable supercars remain impossible. I purchased this car with crash damage, and even after rebuilding it extensively, the car still refuses to start. The situation remains unchanged. We believe it relates to the hybrid battery system, and this will definitely anger many people in the process. Matt's content has consistently followed the do-it-yourself philosophy, but regular observers recognize his DIY approach involved remarkably expensive equipment. This is incomparable to learning bicycle riding or extracting fresh juice from fruit. He predominantly pursued outrageous concepts like 3D printing hypercar components. While some have characterized this as inspired genius supported by fortunate timing, others dismiss it as another experimental stunt. Hence, it doesn't justify the attention or the complications. But Matt harbored serious ambitions, and among them was providing luxury at substantially reduced costs compared to what a new Ferrari would demand. For proper context, the Ferrari 812, a premium luxurious machine with a front mid-engine configuration capable of exceptional performance across most conditions, paired with 789 horsepower and 530 pound-feet of torque, command a market value exceeding $300,000, and Matt understood this completely. However, in his mission to provide access to anyone unable to afford a brand-new version of this car, he promoted the possibility that he could make it available for dramatically less. Even though he never published his final price breakdown, while attempting to fulfill his promises, he discovered that sections of the front structure required complete removal and reconstruction to factory specifications with meticulous measurements, ensuring the headlights, bumper, and body panels would eventually align properly. Inside the cabin, modern Ferrari complexity became unavoidable. All airbags are deployed, seat belts were locked, and crash data was stored in control modules requiring specialist resetting equipment. Immediately, his expectations shattered, but he completed the rebuild because thousands of people were watching him wage this campaign for democratizing luxury automobile ownership. Following the rebuild's completion, he had spent considerably more than anticipated, destroying the fantasy of owning a Ferrari inexpensively. But with a damaged reputation and his YouTube channel's viewership hanging precariously, will Matt finally address his struggles with the brand publicly? The Matt Ferrari standoff reaches its crescendo. After months of tabloid speculation and rumor mills working overtime, manufacturing one unverified claim after another, Matt has emerged forcefully, directly challenging the manufacturer. Predictably, his actions divided social media opinion regarding Ferrari, and their rigid control over their products and the limitations of consumer autonomy. And suddenly, seemingly for the first time in memory, a supercar manufacturer faces public criticism and scrutiny like any other brand. Sources connected to the Maranello brand suggested that violating the company's regulations could result in owners appearing on their infamous blacklist, potentially preventing that customer from ever purchasing subsequent versions of the brand. But like every rule ever established, some rebels exist to challenge them or at least contest their authority. And Matt is definitely somewhere in the process of doing both with reckless determination. And the YouTube community cannot seem to satisfy their appetite for this daredevil's exploits. But how effectively did he execute his strategy? On February 23rd, 2025, Rex Sanchez, a news editor with inside information regarding the Matt Ferrari confrontation, reported that the 32-year-old Englishman claimed he was prevented from ordering components directly from Ferrari and that his opportunities for repairing his 296 GTB through official channels were significantly diminished. At this crossroads, he faced two alternatives: wait until he secured access directly from Ferrari or violate their policies and acquire his replacement parts through alternative sources, complete the repair, and share the entire process with his 6.2 million YouTube subscribers. Obviously, Matt found himself trapped between impossible choices on the verge of entering a no-win scenario. But exactly how severe is the condition of this Ferrari that Matt's expertise simply couldn't overcome? Matt's problem with the Ferrari 296 GTB, which he purchased in damaged condition, was that it absolutely refused to start regardless of how persistently he turned the ignition. Instead, it displayed the notification, "Hybrid system failure. Consult the dealer immediately." But Matt isn't the personality type who surrenders easily, so he chose to address the problem by installing curtain airbags, hoping to deceive the software into initializing, but the strategy simply wasn't succeeding. Consequently, he resigned himself to selecting one of the two options available, which meant admitting defeat, something the legendary Matt Armstrong couldn't accept, or concentrating on rebuilding the vehicle's hardware and hoping that Ferrari softens their position by either dispatching assistance in the form of their certified engineers or simply permitting him to acquire the components he needed to restore the car's functionality. Sources familiar with the situation believe that Matt's previous interactions with other premium luxury brands and performance vehicles had somewhat placed him in their disfavor, and he was experiencing punishment for his dismissive attitude and criticism, which he had successfully concealed for years beneath the expansive umbrella of content creation. But if his conflicts with premium luxury automobiles didn't originate with Ferrari, where else might they have begun? This isn't Matt's first controversy. Frequently, Matt has anchored his content on challenging the notion that luxurious cars remain unaffordable for non-elite consumers. Championing these DIY projects immediately transformed him into every gearhead's hero without requiring a cape. But conversely, the persistent promotion of this message and how enthusiastically people embraced it were beginning to impact, albeit marginally, premium brands like Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, and Bugatti. This audacity, carried by his approachable charm and nearly theatrical storytelling abilities, not only planted seeds of doubt regarding the accepted valuation of what these luxury cars represent, but also whether they can simply be reconstructed from the comfort of an ordinary garage using equipment that could be obtained from a nearby automotive part shop. Although that fantasy didn't survive long when he attempted repairing the wrecked Ferrari 812, Ferrari is threatening to abandon Formula One over new racing regulations and a potential sale of the racing division. He maintained a glimmer of hope that if it couldn't be accomplished for a Ferrari, that didn't mean every other premium car was similarly exempt from a possible do-it-yourself rebuild, specifically mentioning Bugatti in the process. Predictably, that didn't particularly please the leadership at Bugatti headquarters. In fact, Matt claimed that repairing a wrecked Bugatti with seemingly unobtainable damaged parts. Since Bugatti has been crashed on that chassis number, they will not supply any component through a Bugatti dealership, only required a 3D printer. He believed that it wasn't excessively difficult to simply print replacement vehicle parts and install them without negative consequences. Matt, a persuasive communicator and overachiever, packaged yet another revolutionary concept about 3D printing components for a car costing upward of $2 million, and he had nearly all of his 6.2 million viewers captivated completely. However, it didn't take long before his audacious assertions were challenged by other automotive enthusiasts. Their reasoning was straightforward but compelling. They raise questions that connected directly to the genuine value of these so-called luxury automobiles. If we suppose that its bespoke components could be homemade using a simple 3D printer, then is it